Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. I would like to welcome you to the Intern Whisperer airline. This is Flight 5592 heading to Orlando, Florida. We will be in the air for a total of 1 hour. Please be sure you are seated and your seatbelt is fastened. Get ready for takeoff.
Welcome to the Intern Whisperer podcast. The show is all about the future of work and innovation.
So today's Intern Whisperer Employer Tip of the Week is Dr. Gary Chapman. You know, I've been sharing all of these tips with you guys as employers. He wrote this book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And each week I've been sharing one of his appreciation tips. So this week it's 4. It's quality time. You want to make sure that when you're working with anybody in your company, not just interns, but because we're talking about interns, they need to have undivided attention. That means eye contact. That means you're not scrolling through your phone when you're with them. You're not being busy on the computer. So just give time. It doesn't mean it has to be a lot of time. It's time, quality time, like you would with anybody that you have a relationship with, friends, family, and coworkers. All right, so today's guest is Jessica McClintock, CEO, adventure seeker, travel junkie, software executive, chairwoman, Get Inspired guru, pilot in training, sports enthusiast, good energy superhero. This is everything that she has on her LinkedIn. I met her when I was also a speaker at the NBAA. We'll talk about that one too. It's not in the show notes, but I'm going to pull that one up also, Jessica. And I was a speaker there at their conference, and I was blown away. It was one of the most fun, innovative speaking opportunities I had, but this conference was a bunch of 30-year-old people, maybe 30 to 40, I'm not sure, but definitely a group of people that were very tech savvy, that were super, super engaged, and they had really fun activities. So it was a blast, and I am very lucky to have met you. So a little round of applause. Yay, Jessica. Okay, so Jessica, tell us about yourself. Only 5 words. How would you describe it? Because I gave that whole long description.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And so 5 words. What I came up with was empower with inspiration and compassion. And it's kind of more of a phrase in association because it makes sense to me and who I am.
Okay, well, let's break that one down, though, because I like it because nobody's done this. And again, I told you she's super innovative, right? Well, go ahead. Explain it. Why
Sure.
that particular phrase?
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of thinking about it. And, there's a lot of like adjectives that I could describe myself with from the outside in, the inside out. And how I think of the world and what I do in it is you pretty much want to do good, right? You want to do good in this world. You want to inspire somebody, and you want to stand up for what you believe in, what's true to yourself, what's true to your heart. So, inspiring somebody is really important. And you can do it just by doing your daily, everyday activities. So simply by being a good human, you're inspiring somebody to do something, more and more and rinse and repeat.
Yeah. So your description on your LinkedIn has a lot of hats that you wear, like Isabella just mentioned. Mm-hmm. Share more about more about each role. You mentioned CEO, adventure seeker, travel junkie. Where have you traveled? What kind of adventures have you been on?
Well, just to be 100% transparent, those words are what make me smile. And a lot of them have to do with an actual job that I am employed with, or a relationship, or a activity, or a something like a passion, I guess, that I have with this world. There's a lot about life in what I describe myself as, and it's really about finding the good in everything, enjoying the world around you, exploring as much as you possibly can. And I'm just a huge fan of learning. So fun facts that can kind of answer a lot of this is, when hashtags first started coming out, right? This was like, when I was somewhere around 20 years old, I want to say. And it transitioned from being a pound sign on a telephone to hashtag, blankety blank, hashtag, eat burgers or whatever, right? And I was a store manager at the time to young people, actually. It was for a clothing store, American Eagle Outfitters. And I remember during that time, I created, my hashtag was hashtag get excited. And that was my thing. Every time I didn't understand how to use a hashtag yet. So it was more like, hey, Jose, why don't you hashtag get excited and go help out that customer? So it was one of those weird moments where it made me feel excited. It made me feel like empowered. It gave me some sort of energy. And I wanted to share that with other people, that I felt that they should get some of that like little piece of energy too. So as the years went on, I decided to keep on evolving that kind of phrase and that kind of, motivational kind of, little bit of inspiration here and there. So I created hashtag get inspired is what I actually kind of transitioned to in my old age, quote unquote. So fits me a little bit better. As far as travel goes, I could tell you I've traveled 6 of the 7 continents. So far in my life, I've been really, really just in a great position to where I've been able to facilitate, the ability to travel to these different places, experience these different cultures, and really just do it on the whim. If I had an opportunity to go somewhere, I'd pack up my stuff. I'd go to the airport. Most of the time, I flew on standby quite a bit. If I didn't have a ticket and I had, a friend that would give me benefits so that I could fly around whenever I could, they knew I'd use it, right? I go to the airport. If the ticket wasn't available, I'd pick another spot on the map, and it's kind of like that kind of mentality is who I am as a person. And I would go to China for a weekend, an extended weekend, but for a weekend.
Oh my God, that's a 12-hour flight. That's crazy.
That's what, you take the moment, you make time, right? So it's one of those things where you're only allotted X amount. Technically, with the time difference and stuff, you kind of get it back after you pay it forward. But nonetheless, like, it's one of those situations where you have to make the time if you really want to do something, and then you work your schedule around what you really want to do. So I did that for my travel. I love traveling. I can tell you about that all day long. I love aviation, so I became an executive for a company we'll talk about, which is FuelerLinx. So I've been working with them, and that's part of that slogan as well on my LinkedIn. Also, I do a lot of other stuff. Like I actually work for National Business Aviation Association as a volunteer. I volunteer as a chairperson for them. I'm the chairwoman for the Young Professionals Council, which is all dedicated to young people. That's how Isabella and I met actually at one of the events that we hosted. And then I also, am now the inbound co-chair for NBAA's sustainability committee. So there's a lot of different kind of moving parts. And then the whole sports thing, I got to tell you, I'm a huge sports fan. I am a diehard, like, Seattle Mariners, #1. Baseball, if you're not familiar. And then I love basketball. I love pretty much anything that there's some sort of competition in it where you can kind of enjoy and get ready with that. So, so does that answer most of that? I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah.
Where's the software executive come into play?
Yeah, software executives for FuelerLinx. It's the Fuel Marketplace software program, and I happen to be the vice president of global accounts for FuelerLinx. So I started from the bottom. Now I'm here, but it's true. So, pulling a little bit from my music loving self, it's been a journey. And so I do that as well, which is funny because I never thought I'd like software, but you get used to it, and then you find a lot of innovation from it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. That's what Employers for Change is. We've just done a rebranding of the company from Intern Pursuit into Employers for Change. And it's really specifically speaking to the target demographic. I knew zero about software development, and having gone through this process of having to create what's called a technical specification document, basically a roadmap, a business plan for how the platform or your software is supposed to work. I learned that. We created mock-ups. I've learned how to speak. I consider it being multilingual, whether I am talking with my software developers, my game developers, or the video or graphic design, whatever the department is, by continuous learning like what you shared that you embrace, I do also. And I sit here and go, I'm multilingual, but in industry talk. So
yeah,
gotta own that one. Yeah,
I
not
like
languages. Do you speak multiple languages also?
Good question. Well, aviation, as you know, technology is a whole nother language. Aviation is an entirely new language for me. I was just talking with an ATC guy, which is air traffic control. They're the guys that are up in the towers, and they tell you what to do and how to do it and how to fly and stay out of other airplanes. That's a whole nother language. Google it if anybody doesn't know about that stuff. It gives you a different breakdown. As far as languages from different countries and cultures,
there you go.
I was all about that life when I still am, but when I was a retail store manager back in those days in Seattle, Washington area, it was at the hub of like an international airport right by SeaTac. So when people came in, they're from all over the world. They're transitioning or, connecting flights over to Europe and Asia and all over the place. So when anybody came in, I kept what's kind of referred to as like a Rolodex. It was like, like little Post-its and stuff in a just like a stapled environment. I would keep that, and I'd ask people every time they came in, hey, can you teach me how to say hello in your language? Like, please explain to me. And I never did it in any kind of unprofessional way or any way that was, intrusive or anything. If I felt the vibe, I asked. And I learned how to say hello and thank you, because those, I think, are the two most helpful words or phrases, depending on what language it is, to advance some sort of friendship or advance some sort of like welcoming. So I did that in about 16 different languages, I think I learned, and I was able to, speak that way. Spanish, I learned a lot more because there's a lot more Spanish-speaking customers that came into my store. So I was able to sell clothing and all that kind of stuff. But it's exciting. It's a lot of work, but it's really fun. I'm still learning today. So
I love that. So one of the things that I've learned is I think the three most important phrases is I agree with you. Hello, please, thank you. Yes, I checked that one off. Where's the bathroom? I would put that on the next list if I'm traveling to other countries. Yep. And then where is there still water? Because I don't want the water with the bubbles in it. So, I'm, bottled water too. I can't drink the water in another country. So I feel like if I have those four things, maybe help. That's a good word to know. Like help, I need help, with whatever.
I like
I'll just add to the Google Translator words that I use the most frequently.
Right. Yeah.
I also ask.
That program is kind of a lifesaver, by the way. When you're in a different country and you don't know how to say something, yes, it'll get a little bit wrong here and there, but is it better than trying to stumble over and accidentally cursing at somebody versus asking them for still water?
It gets the point across, right? You can like kind of in a roundabout way understand what I'm trying to get to you.
Do you have a pilot's license? I know that was up earlier, but I don't remember you saying you have one yet. Do you?
So I'm in progress of getting my pilot certification, and I actually just recently joined an airplane club. So I will be able to finish my training. Hopefully I'll get to solo. I'm about 37 hours in dual training right now in a 172, which is a small 4-seater airplane. So I will be able to solo, which means I'll be able to fly in an airplane by myself and get the rest of my training before I get my certification, probably by either the end of the year or beginning of next year.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. So random question, but do they teach you how to jump out of the plane in case something happens? And I think of all of those people like the Kennedys, right? John F. Kennedy Jr., seasoned pilot, but like, are they teaching you how to save yourself?
That's not a part of the training. However, I've already done that. I did that for my 32nd birthday, I think it was. I jumped out of a plane. I went through skydiving because it was so much fun. There's a YouTube on it if you find it. It's kind of interesting. I'm crazy. I don't think of it like that, though. To answer kind of the base of your question, I don't think of it like that. I think of like it would be really tough to open a door with the velocity and with like what you're going through, depending on where you are in altitude too, that I don't think you'd really be able to. I think the best chance of anything is to figure out where your glide path is, which is basically how your plane can go without an engine on, how it can just glide as, wings. So if it can just glide and you can find somewhere, and that's what you look for every single time you go up, is you have to find a place almost every time that you're flying. Almost every minute you want to keep in the back of your head, if something were to go wrong, what would I do? And you have to go through those steps in your mind and see if there's some sort of strip or some sort of landing field or something nearby, so that you're reducing the amount of potential dangers or hazards that you can cause yourself. And really I don't find it unsafe at all. I feel like it's way safer than driving, and it's really, really comforting. A lot less traffic. You don't have to wait for, for the red light and then have to go anyways. In California, you have to take that left turn regardless.
There can't be any traffic tickets. That's what I'm thinking.
Right. Well, you could get a call, which that call is a very frightening call, where you could lose your certification fairly quickly if you cause any kind of danger or safety hazard to another pilot or to yourself. So that is something super serious, and I take it super seriously as well. So that's why I'm not rushing to get my pilot certification. I think it needs a lot of education behind it and know with also.
Oh gosh, yeah. You learn how to fly with instruments then, right? Is that how they teach you?
Well, so the first level of certification is considered visual flight. So it's a VFR is what it is, visual flight regulations. And then IFR is the instrument training. So yes, you learn some instruments and you understand how to utilize them. But if the weather isn't good enough for you to fly just clear as day without utilizing your instruments pretty much, like you have to be able to utilize that first. So VFR means pretty much there's a limitation to when you can fly and consider it safe. So I wouldn't be able to fly at, in hazardous weather where there's fog or where there's storms or anything like that until I get my certification specifically that says I can fly by just using my instruments is what IFR is. So, yeah.
Have you looked into, or are you familiar with like the craze of like Microsoft Flight Simulator and what just like recently happened, how it blew up? Have you played with Microsoft Flight Simulator?
Yeah. Yeah, it's I really enjoy those programs. In fact, I am lucky enough to say that my boss at FuelerLinx is actually he's putting together the flight simulator in the other office right around the corner from me. Oh, awesome. So I will be able to utilize that anytime I want. It is different, just throwing that out there.
Sure. But it's not like the real thing.
It is so much fun. Now, there's a lot of similarities, and it's very addicting. It's very much like video game-esque with the ability to understand how everything works a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, I took like a 2-hour flight to my high school in a Boeing like 747 just because I could, and it took a long time to get there, but I did it.
In a simulator?
Right.
Yeah.
But you weren't really flying.
I mean, not really flying. Like I wasn't in the sky.
But simulated flight.
It was a 2-hour simulated flight, so it kind of felt grueling, but yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because my brother's taken me into, now he's in the Army and he's a helicopter pilot, but he's taking me into the Army simulators, which are very different. And it was all helicopter flying. And I went, oh my God, this feels truly, I'd never been in a helicopter, but it had to be the real experience because honestly, that's what they're doing, because it was like moving and then they would go, okay. And my brother's going, okay, let's simulate what it's going to feel like to fall. And that's why I was asking about that, because I think that there's the safety side of it is, and I do go to John F. Kennedy as the family, because he's looking for a way. You're not supposed to fly at night. You're supposed to fly, like you said, visually. And he's going, okay, where can I land? And he's over water. And I'm thinking water is the worst place. You're not going to do well if you try to land in water. Land is better in my mind. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand the logic because I have not gone through the courses you've gone through.
No, and anybody can learn these things too. Like you can buy a ground school packet that teaches you all like kind of the basic skills that you need to know behind the regulations and restricted things. You can do that through like what's called the King School program. It's online. They're kind of an older couple that evolved this whole training package online. I use that as well. But to kind of go back to that, you can fly at night, and that's no problem for VFR as long as the night is clear and you can, because you can turn on your lights and you can still do things. But the whole water footprint is really tricky. You want to minimize your footprint over water anytime that you fly an airplane because of what you're talking about. Like if you don't have the ability to for the capacity to get to somewhere else, you need a landmark, and planes aren't going to survive as I mean, I'm not an expert at this, but I'm going to assume that the percentage of plane crashes that happen, if they happen in water, it's a lot more tricky to find survivors versus if you find somewhere to land and you happen to have your wheels and everything down and you're able to glide. you know, you might crash into something, but I just feel like that's probably one of the big rules. Like limit your footprint over water.
Landing on, which I've seen in the news where people land on a highway or some type of a road. I'm going, that's got to be way safer than anything else, because cars, while it may cause some car crashes, I don't think it's necessarily going to be the things that maybe it's a big assumption that they would die from, because get out of the way. Planes on the road.
Oh gosh.
So they're like, it's emergency vehicles. And I'm thinking you can get out of the way to a certain extent. I'm thinking, but you know, it's just a lot of assumptions. Like I said, I could talk about this particular conversation for a long time. It's very interesting to me. So tell us about FuelerLinx. Tell us about the company. How did you get there? But what do they do? Because that's an interesting name. I don't know if you know the story of the company, because I know you're not the CEO of it, but damn, you're pretty high up there.
Damn, yeah. So the CEO and president is actually the one that created it. He's my direct boss, and he's a good friend of mine. And he created it because in business aviation, or in general aviation as a whole, there are a lot of processes, and there are a lot of what we refer to as silos, where pretty much you have an organization and you have 5 different parts to that organization. Maybe it's like, you know, HR, then you have maybe your service or customer service area. You have your operators, or the people that are doing the product. There's like a maintenance side. There's a whole bunch of different sides to this whole aviation world, and every company's like that. So what happens is these silos don't talk to each other. You don't know what the pilots are doing versus what the mechanics are doing versus what the HR or the directors are doing. So his idea was to optimize some of the processes that came about through his experience. So what he did is he started generating these pricing files and compiling it manually. So back in the day when they had floppy disks, and that was very prominent to use floppy disks, you know, that's how you would download or upload something into your computer so that you can go through maybe a spreadsheet or some details. Well, he would actually physically create those for each flight operation. Wow. So a flight department like Nike has private jets. A flight department like, you know, you've probably heard of Wheels Up or NetJets or something like that. They all have, you know, a whole fleet of private jets, or they have a couple of private jets. The way they shop fuel or shop for, you know, their gas, and like what we do in our cars, is really intricate. And you start realizing that there are a lot of options that go into this whole process. So my boss, Kevin Mueller, he wanted to optimize that process and find a better way to not only have some sort of communication and marketplace for that flight operations to be all associated with, but also find them the best deals, show them how to shop for their fuel so that they're not getting kind of screwed over, right? If there's 2 FBOs on the field, and which are like kind of gas stations or rest stops, I guess, for airplanes too, where they fuel up and maybe the passengers get out and do all their things. They may have 7 different contract fuel programs, meaning maybe 7 different kind of equivalencies to gas stations at that location with all different pricing. So if you break that down and multiply that out, there's tons upon tons of options and different fees associated with landing at an airport. So Kevin combined all of these details into a program, and a process that would take a flight operation, let's say 2, 3, 4 hours for a single trip, for one trip. He condensed it all the way down to a process that takes somewhere around maybe 30 seconds to 90 seconds, depending on how intricate it becomes, with all the different algorithms and some back-end learning processes and rules. Brilliant. And it's an entire process. And now, don't worry, it's not a floppy disk. It's all completely web automated. So, you know, it's a website that they log on to, and they're able to pull their pricing instantly, see the best way of fueling their aircraft for the entirety of the trip, no matter if it's, you know, a few different legs or locations that they travel to in one day, or if it's multiples or whatnot. And it caught kind of like fire, and we became really popular in the business aviation marketplace. And we have somewhere around 300 flight departments, and that's close to, I want to say, like 2,500 or 2,800 tail numbers, which it's kind of like the license plate for an airplane. So it's an individual airplane. We have about 2,800 of those using our program to this day. So it's kind of exciting.
So this is how I am interpreting this. And I never thought about
Yeah,
it.
please
So you
do.
actually brought this up. So I know as a driver, I can choose Wawa, or I can choose 7-Eleven gas, or I can choose anywhere I want to go, right? Because as a driver of a vehicle, I have those options. I never have thought about going to an airport, and I see them fueling up the planes. I see that happening, but I always thought, oh, it's always just one provider. That sounds like a monopoly. What you've described to me now is that I can have, not really, but Wawa fuel, or I can have 7-Eleven fuel, if you will. But, it's whatever is. I know airplane fuel is entirely different than automotive fuel, just to be clear too, for listeners and everybody else. But it sounds like now they actually can shop this, and they can say, hey, bring up whatever the brand name is, and this is the fuel that I want. So it makes it a more competitive process in that marketplace at the airport, which I never realized. Is that accurate?
I think it's yes, it's pretty dang close. Yes. And it just gets more complex when you add in all the different variables, because there's volume breaks that go into it. It's all the same fuel, but it's just different resellers of the same fuel. So it's kind of like incestuous in this weird way of fuel world for today.
Yeah. It's done that way with air conditioners too. To my understanding, that build air conditioning units, it's all made by one company, but then they distribute it under 5 names, is what I've been told. And I went, really? So it's like you could go in the grocery store.
Fuel,
Pampers,
air conditioning.
Pampers, Loves, and Honey. 2 of those are made by the same company, and
that's
it's
crazy.
Capturing market share. And the buyer thinks they have a choice when, maybe they do and they don't. But it's a good way to do, I guess I would call it A/B testing, and go, okay, if we sell our airplane fuel for $39 a gallon versus over here, we could be selling it for $35 a gallon. We're still capturing, tons of market share. Some people think they're getting better. Is it right?
Yeah.
I just took a number.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
How competitive?
No. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, real Jet A fuel pricing is very similar to California gas pricing right now. So it's closer to like $4 a gallon, $5 a gallon, depending on where you are. But still, I was like, wow, that's expensive. Especially if you have to take on thousands of gallons.
I just think that airplane fuel is going to be so much more expensive than anything else. It's like rocket fuel, like NASA, it's like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes or no, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised to learn that it's like $4 a gallon too. But then when you're thinking about, thousands of miles per gallon, like thousands and thousands of miles, like you're burning through a lot of fuel.
So how big is a fuel tank in an airplane? And I know it depends upon the size of the airplane, but average plane, like what's an average plane?
Like
is
a commercial plane?
Boeing 747? I don't know. What?
I mean, right off bat, forgive me if my math is completely off, but I would guesstimate that on like a typical commercial airplane, it's going to be somewhere around 20,000 gallons to get from LA to New York or something like that. So it's going to be in the thousands for a lot of different kind of legs wherever you go. But I fly little baby airplanes that are not jets at this point. And then I train on the business jets, and they range from different makes and models and classifications, from like a very light aircraft, which is a smaller aircraft, all the way up through like a super heavy jet, which is more like a wide body, big, like Boeing business jet. If you've looked up those bad boys, they're massive, have big tanks, and they can tanker a lot, which means basically they can take on a lot more than typically they need to get to their next location. And they can do that, like something like that could fly from LA to Hong Kong without making a stop, versus a typical plane has to make a stop somewhere. If you think of like, an average.
Do you feel a difference in weight of plane when you're flying them?
Oh yeah. Like think of all of that.
Silly, but like
fuel in the plane. It's got to be heavier.
Like a light plane versus like one of those bulkier like jets. Like if you're flying one, wow, this is a much heavier.
Oh yeah. 100 billion%. Yes. Like the plane that I train in is a 172, a Cessna 172, 4-seater airplane. It literally fits 4 people, and it will not fit anybody else, right? Barely any luggage capacity. What's that?
Does it have luggage capacity?
A little bit.
Overnight.
But you have to be careful of the weights and capacities that you're able to get away with, because that's going to throw off just the whole balance of the airplane as well, right? So you have to pay attention to all those variables for safety measures as well. So there's a huge amount of regulations on that I won't get into. But yes, you can feel like you're a pop can sometimes floating in the air in a small airplane, whereas you get turbulence in like a 747 or 777 or something like that. And you feel it, and you feel the bumps a little bit, but you're not hitting your head on the ceiling. And I've been in the turbulence in a 172 where you just flat out, like, my headset, like, pretend that this is my aviation headset, and I like bump up, hit the ceiling like instantly, and you have to be careful of those things. So it can be a little crazy when you're not used to it, but it gets kind of fun too at the same time.
Oh my God. I love this whole conversation. Yeah,
Seriously.
I know. I'm sitting there going, oh my God. And actually, just so you know, Jessica, I've been going, okay, we're going to have to take a few questions off of the front of our show so that we have enough time for the back end of our show, because it still is tying all into what we're talking about now. Super excited. Okay, pie or cake, what kind and why?
I would do pie, 100%, and I would do some sort of peanut buttery chocolate, like anything that's almost Reese's but not quite. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Does that a graham cracker crust also for crunch?
Yes. Yes, please.
Any type of whipped cream on there?
Well, side note, I am lactose intolerant, but that's what lactate pills are for.
Yeah, but they also have that you can use as substitute. So, you're totally good.
That's true. The fake whipped cream is actually really, really good now. Like they've started to make some stuff that actually makes it pretty decent, but it's worth it. Reese's pie, totally worth it.
They have something, I don't know if it's still on the shelf anymore, but I remember my mom and my grandmother had it. It's called Dream Whip. It was a powdered milk. If you threw almond milk in it, I bet it would totally work, because it's a powdered milk. It's not real milk.
You're making me feel kind of old when you say that. Like my grandmother used to use this, so she might like it. You might like it for your stuff too.
Yeah, but I don't think they sell that in the store, because I don't go looking for it anymore. But my
grandmother, do it to me, Isabella.
Well, that just means we're probably around the same decade. That's all. So that's all good. No, yeah, please. We are not old. That's when we're in the grave. That's when old is. Okay. So anyway, Dream Whip. I think that if you did that, you could get away with it. But now I'm going to go to the grocery store and look for some alternative, I guess, almond milk, whipped cream. So
yeah.
All right, Matt, you get the next question.
Does life exist on other planets?
He loves this question.
I do like this.
100%. Yes.
Why do you say that?
I have no doubt that there's life on another planet. I get fascinated with the galaxy upon galaxy upon galaxy. One of the things that always triggers my mind on this is thinking about, this is a really silly example, but hopefully stay with me. Men in Black.
I just watched it last night.
She's mentioned this 3 weeks in a row. You've nailed it on the head.
I said Men in Black.
Okay.
I watched it again last night.
That's awesome.
The last scene, okay? Right? Like, hands down. Think about the last scene, and then, like, just watch it and just, like, really think. This idea came from the fact that there's validity to every idea, I think.
Yeah,
if you think it's happened, or it could happen, or somebody knows more about it, I think there's something.
That's why science fiction movies are based on people that have already seen what the future is, or it's absolutely real. Like that movie Face Off, when John Travolta and Nick Cage were in there.
Yep.
Put it on, please. They were doing face transplants way, after that, but they were doing
I get you. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Totally.
So that's why I think yes.
Yeah. Have you remember a couple months back there was that footage that got released? I don't know. I think it was the Pentagon who officially released it for the UFOs that were being released, and not like a lot of people took it and ran with it, and then news outlets were like UFOs, aliens, but unidentified flying object. It doesn't have to be extraterrestrial, but and there was all that footage that came out of have you ever seen anything weird while you were flying or up in a plane?
Good question, Matt. Good question.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a great question. No, I haven't. Dang it. But it's one of those things that you you have to like think about, like you have to think about all the different kind of creatures and animals that are on the planet already, and the life, the existence that's already surrounding you. If you go in the water, do you know how many different kind of species are
Men in Black, cockroaches, they're from another planet.
Shrimp, like shrimp and the microbacteria you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, there's undiscovered, you know, there's so many different kind of species, and I feel like we're only on the surface of things. I think there's a ton that are way smarter and way more like, you know, futuristic than us. Like Independence Day, think about those aliens. I mean, they had that whole like, you know, telecommunication thing going down, like, you know what I mean? So
I definitely know what you mean. Yes.
So, like telecommunication, you know what I mean? Okay. But I love it. So
okay, so we're going to take a break for our sponsor, Cat5 Studios.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat5 Studios.
Back to our show. This part of our show is about the future of jobs and industries in 2030. What do you predict the future of our industry and jobs will be like in 2030 in terms of like robotics, automation, virtual reality, or augmented reality?
Ooh, and let's just also put Star Trek travel so that we can beam me up, Scotty, so we can all say that.
Exactly. I think that's a fantastic idea, Isabel. Like, it's gotta be something where I think 2030 is going to be aggressive to get there. I think it's going to get a little bit of a bite into, you know, teleportation and whatnot. But if you ever think of like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Do you remember that? Where you know, Mike TV and he wants the chocolate bar. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Well, they actually have a train. This was what was proposed here in Florida. There was going to be, and I don't know what happened to it. About 5 years ago, they were talking about a pneumatic tube that we would get in. And from Orlando, I could be in Miami in 15 minutes. And I'm going, I don't want to be in anything that is moving me that fast, because that is honestly terrifying. It hasn't been tested, but that is where they were saying that, yeah, we can move people that fast.
People have no business moving that fast.
No. In a tube? And what happens if it crashes?
Futurama.
Oh,
Like,
that would
but
be.
That's so fascinating, though. Isn't that fascinating? I bet you if you throw it on like kind of the forefront of like all of these race to space guys that are out there right now, tell them the first one to, you know, teleportate. I don't know. Is that even a word? Teleportate. I added the 8 at the end. Teleport people, you know, in a tube to the next, you know, next state over, or to the next county over. Who can race to that? Maybe we should do that and offer a cash prize. You know, anybody will do it for $50. Let's see who does.
Yeah, they're spending obviously. My theory is the reason why space exploration is accelerating with the billionaires is they go, okay, there's insider knowledge that we apparently in Men in Black don't know.
Yeah.
And remember in Men in Black when Tommy Lee Jones is sitting on the park bench with Will Smith, and he said, just think if people knew today what they didn't know yesterday. Like, I sat there and went, and people are dumb, stupid cows. That's not what he said, but it was something like that. You know, they just, I just sat there and went, that is so true. We just really don't know what's going on. Anyway, getting back to the point, I went, they must know something, which is why they're going way past the government going, oh, let's get people out there. They're going, oh, we're going to be the first one out there. They're making sure that they're going to be the ones. So it's either we're going to live in a sea that's filled with pollution, not likely, or we're going to be outside of this planet, because where else are we going? You know, you're going to have to be there. So Guardians of the Galaxy, my other favorite movie, because I also feel like it's very much like that, because you see so many extraterrestrials, and that's what it could be like, you know, to be on another planet. I think that's there. Anyway, coming back here to the real world, robots. One of the things that I think is going to be truly happening is They can automate the repair of a plane with robots or robotic maintenance. I can see that happening. Obviously, that creates job opportunities for people that can repair the robots, and having some standard of care of ensuring that it is the best practices is in place. And if you have to do those same standard checks for a plane to make sure that a plane can, obviously travel, you would have to have that in robotics. So that would be what I would see job opportunities being there. Now, I guess robots would be building planes, just like robots build cars in car manufacturing. Is that happening? Do robots build planes, or is it all done by humans right now?
I know that there's automations to it. I don't know the in-depth on it, but I know there's a lot of automation similar to like a car line or something like that. But
Yeah.
I have not actually met a robot in my life yet, or one that builds airplanes quite yet. I have seen different kind of robotics added to like kind of self-flying airplanes and whatnot. There's also a lot of companies that are working on, the eVTOLs, which are electric vehicle takeoff and landings.
Right.
Basically like kind of a hovercraft almost, right?
Mhm.
So that's really, really fascinating right now to kind of look at. But
Are those like
that's
Harrier
my
jets?
knowledge on.
Are they similar to like
Are they
Harriers?
Or drones.
Harriers?
Like
Or
Harrier
like drone?
jets,
Yeah.
I don't
Mhm.
know. They use like rockets to propel themselves upwards so they
A
don't take off.
carry, like
Harrier, Harrier,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
like
Yeah.
a military jet.
I've never
Yeah.
heard that term.
We can cut this part.
So the
Okay, it's
the ones for like the eVTOLs, it's more right now they're utilizing it in Uber. Uber's kind of creating this whole idea and this concept behind their transportation of clients or us passengers through eVTOLs or electric vehicle takeoff and landings, where they'll show up at a location and it's just like electric movement that kind of propels it. It's like almost like a helicopter airplane, kind of a hybrid is what it kind of looks like. So that's what's happening and already happening, and they're very confident of launching that in the near future. I think there's too many questions to launch that anytime soon. I think there's too many uncertainties, and I don't think there's enough regulations like what you're talking about, this whole standard of certifications. There's not enough regulations or knowns. Like there's too many what ifs, and there's not enough knowns to make this widely utilized as of right now.
I bet they're having discussions on this, though.
Right, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. They have to be getting that into the future of work plan that is, obviously hitting everybody, because we're in a generation right now, and honestly a year, it's all about upskilling, because everything is becoming faster and faster and faster, and technology is evolving overnight. And if that's happening, that means we've got to keep those job opportunities, obviously keeping up with the technology that we're creating. That means a lot of different jobs. And I feel like the ability to build a plane would be something that could be done through robotics or an automations or some type of a flow. But the maintenance of it is going to be where the next job opportunities would be. And I call it a standard of care. I know that's a healthcare term, but honestly, your regulations, I prefer that one because you're using the right terminology there. The regulations for that, because you're talking about putting hundreds of people inside of a plane, or it could be just 10 or 4 inside of a plane with a lot of fuel that's kind of like a firecracker. And I would want to know that it's been carefully regulated, and it's also got levels of checks and balances that keep me safe and keep everybody else safe that is in that path of flight, whatever. I still want to fly, though. I still want to do what you're doing. I'm not afraid of it. I just want to sit here and do it. I want to do those things for sure. Anyway.
Have you taken a discovery flight before?
I have not. Maybe I can do that with you when you get your license.
Yeah, when I'm fully certified and comfortable, because I promised myself, even if I have a shadow of doubt that I would make somebody feel uncomfortable on the plane with me because I might be showing nerves or something like that, I told myself I have to feel 100% confident in what I do so that if anybody comes up with me, they will want to go again. That's kind of the long
I trust
story
you now.
short.
I do
You can take me
too.
out now. I trust you.
Yeah.
You said it's safer than driving. I'm
We'll
like,
be in
okay.
seat 3 and 4 of the plane because
Yeah.
she's in a 4-seater plane.
Oh, true.
So funny.
Yeah, we'll definitely. So sustainability, what does sustainability look like for this industry? And do you see any potential jobs that are coming out of that? What do you think?
Yeah, well, so one of my newest roles is being the co-chair for the National Business Aviation Association's Sustainability Environmental Committee, or it's a subcommittee, I suppose. And what we do with that is we're actually digging into those questions. We're digging into how can aviation, and specifically in my case, business aviation. So for companies that own their own aircraft and want to travel, or supplying those aircraft as charter airplanes to people that want to travel privately. What we're doing right now is kind of researching and building kind of a tutorial for flight departments to understand how to onboard with that process of becoming sustainable, quote unquote. But that's just kind of a broad term. It doesn't mean a lot to people that haven't heard it before. It really is just all about thinking about your future and being able to sustain longer than just today, right? You're trying to sustain for the future generations. So one of the first steps to that has to do, and it surrounds around what we talked about earlier about jet fuel, right? So specifically, it's called SAF, which is Sustainable Aviation Fuel. What it refers to is kind of the blend between, if you go to Wendy's and they have cooking oil and grease and everything that comes out of their trays, well, we're blending that with traditional Jet A, and I mean the industry as a whole, but they're blending that in the refineries to try to make what's referred to as SAF. It's a blend of both Jet A as well as cooking oils or used products, vegetation, that kind of thing combined, so that it burns cleaner when the airplane utilizes it. Now, as of today, there's a lot of commercial airlines on board with this. Whole idea of sustainability and pushing to carbon neutral is the goal for a lot of these organizations, including a lot of the corporate entities as well. So you'll see a lot about that if you go to like Walmart's website or Costco or Nike, any of those big guys that you've probably all heard of. You can go to their website. Yes. They'll probably, you're right. they have sustainability plans, right? Mm-hmm. And it's all about what is their company culture doing to prevent the the carbon offset gases and everything that's happening to our universe and to our specifically our planet right now, causing greenhouse gas emissions. We're trying to reduce that and find ways to expel less of the gases and less of what's harming our environment. So doing so, one of the quickest ways to start doing that, which impacts a lot because everybody uses fuel to some extent, whether it's an airplane or a vehicle, is going either, the electric vehicles you see that helps, prevent any of those additional gases from coming out. But also in aviation, it's hard, what we just talked about, from being in a regulation standpoint to truly transition over to an electric, airplane to some extent. So right now there's like a middle ground. There's like right now, what can we do? And it's the fact that we found an opportunity in the jet fuel side to start limiting what's happening with that, with kind of the carbon dioxide that's going into the planet and causing our planet to, be, I guess, more affected by these greenhouse gases in our universe. So that's what's kind of happening right now. So we're trying to educate everybody on that. And our first step is educating ourselves as industry leaders and identifying kind of the ways that a flight department can interact and particularly create their own sustainability action plans related not only to the fuel side and understanding the regulations and incentives to go that direction, but also on the operations, the ground and facility side, anything that has to do with the organization as a whole. So it's not necessarily limited to a flight operation. You can do your part by, little bitty things that you do on a daily basis, Mm-hmm. So kind of exciting topic. There's a lot of what ifs and how that's and what's going to happen next kind of things. But, we're learning as we go through it. It's kind of like pioneering something brand new and hoping that we find a good way to come together.
Yeah. Definitely ideation.
Yeah.
Has
Yep.
there been pushback from
Exactly.
fuel industries or from the fuel industry with a more like renewable energy efficient, but maybe not energy efficient, but a more, renewable resource,
Like solar.
Um,
or even just
Specifically,
with
it's
this
going to be.
integrated fuel?
Mhm.
Mm.
The pushback, I wouldn't say is so much on the fuel side of things. That's where, so the refineries are investing their time and their energy into producing this fuel that's drop-in ready. Basically, you can mix it with traditional Jet A if it goes into your tank kind of thing.
Cool.
But more of the pushback is by the mechanic side. And, I know, Isabella, you've been talking about this a few times, but it's about that whole, checks and balances of the standards of fixing an airplane, making sure that its airworthiness is up to par, that the people on board are taken care of, or at least we're taking the preventatives. Yeah, that's super important. So you can understand that from the maintenance perspective, they're not being given all the information that they need yet, and it's because of these large operations like Boeing and Bombardier and all these companies. They're trying to, but they haven't fully convinced every single operation that yes, this is going to be safe for your aircraft to take on. So now start using it. There's a very trickle-in effect with every single kind of new technology, whether it was Tesla when they first came out and people
Sure.
were like, well, I'm not sure. I don't know if I can use this this vehicle without me driving. I can't put it on this mode right now because it scares the hell out of me. Like I can't be the one to test it. Somebody else has to test it before me. And that's kind of the mentality right now. And that's kind of the pushback for a lot of this going viral in a sense. And it's actually starting to catch, to really, really start impacting the entire industry right now, even more heavily in the past, I don't know, since the new administration and with everything else trying to, basically incentivize the push of decarbonization. So,
Yeah. And we touched on this, electric planes or using something like that.
Mhm.
I know we talked about it before the show, but I sit here and I think about electric planes and I'm going, okay, electric cars, I'm on the ground, I can pull over, yes, and then I'm plugging into a device. I actually went up to one of the I don't know, solar station, I don't know, energy stations, where electric stations where I could go and plug in. And I was going, how do they charge for this? And I'm just trying to understand what's going on. And I'm looking at the meters and going, oh, okay, I see how they're charging. And it's, I think it was per minute is how they charged. And it was like 10 cents a minute. I'm going, wow. So what's the capacity of this battery and how far can I go on this in a car? And I was thinking about it as it relates to a plane. I'm going, all right, what's the size of that battery? Would there be solar panels on a plane? Like I'm thinking of all of the possibilities and I'm thinking about the weight also. And I'm going, okay, how is that weight going to impact the ability to do it? I'm not quite sure that I think that would work very well to me, it's still about sustainability or being energy efficient, right? But they said that electric planes will work for like small ones, like what you were describing, but not necessarily for the big ones. They're trying to figure that one out still. That's a lot of what ifs, like you're saying.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs to that. And I really think with this whole push of SAF, the Sustainable Aviation Fuel, and with the operations thing, this is kind of like the bridge to get there, So we don't have the answers yet for going fully, carbon neutral. We have the answers to kind of offset that and maybe, do this process here, combine it with this process here and try to make it fit. We're kind of stitching ideas together in different processes. From the electric vehicle or the electric, aviation side, I don't think it has enough lift per se to get off the ground yet. And I really don't see it happening for the next, I would say 25, 30 years. I really don't think that it's going to be fully out there for the next 25, 30 years. Now, I've been wrong about a lot of things, and I hope that I'm wrong for the sake of, the quickness of innovation and getting, getting new ideas and new inventions and different ways of transportation and everything kind of rolling faster. That's great. That's wonderful. As long as they break down the whole process of regulations and understanding the safety protocol, because that's the number one thing we are always going to fall back to. Is this safe? And do people or do clients or do operations, do they buy into it? Because if there's no demand because it's scary, or because there's no, proof that the concept actually is something that, is impactful in a positive way, then it's not going to take off that quickly or that easily. So there's going to be a lot of buy-in needed right here.
Best mentoring advice that you want to share with our listeners?
All right. Mentoring advice. I got to say, it depends. It depends from two different perspectives. I am a mentor myself, but I also pride myself on being a mentee. I think that from a mentor perspective, it's all about getting to know your mentor, getting to know if that person fits you in the way that, makes sense to what you're trying to accomplish out of that relationship, and setting some really clear-cut kind of goals and initiatives with that leader or that mentor that you work with. What I would tell somebody that I mentor would probably be based off of the person in general, just because it's going to be something that sinks in with their specific goals and missions. Best thing that I could say to anybody would be ask a lot of questions and stop being so dang scared. Like, figure it out. Whatever that is, whatever you want out of this, don't quit. Don't give any excuses to why you can't do it. Start figuring out proactive solutions to why you can, and then make it happen. And if you don't know what those steps are, ask questions. Ask people that have been there or that have an idea or give you a different perspective. But it's always going to be about don't be scared. So from a mentee perspective, that kind of combines those two worlds together. But I like to think that I am an outgoing person to where my mind doesn't have a lot of filters. So I will say almost everything that comes to my head at the moment that I think it. I think being respectful and especially of that person's time, if you're utilizing a mentor, being respectful of their time and their energy, because it is 100% of mentorship has to do with one person taking time for another person to help elevate them or empower them in the direction that they choose to go in. I think that's a first stepping stone.
That is awesome advice, seriously, because I am kind of entering a workforce now where I'm like looking for mentors, and I'm looking for people to kind of aid me and learn these things. And having a clear goal in mind and understanding like what I want to get out of this so you can formulate your questions more effectively is like, that's great advice. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. I'm glad. Happy to help.
So I think we're getting to about that time now. So how can our listeners contact you? Maybe a website or social media?
Sure. I'm not a huge social media person, believe it or not, but I am on LinkedIn, and that is kind of the business interaction and networking and connecting. You can find me on my LinkedIn.
Okay, is that a show? I'm not sure, and it should be.
Very on brand.
All right. Well, thank you to our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios. Thank you to our production team, Becca Coffey, associate producer, intern, video and audio editing team, Steve Neese, Ayana Saunders, our video interns, Nick Morales and Alex Teal, sound effects, Matt Miller, who's sitting across the table from me, Miguel Centra, Dave Francis, and our music composers, Sophie Lloyd, Charles Fleming, Elijah Sutton, Dave Francis, and Arnab Sirvastav. All right, so employers, visit Employers for Change website, and you can find us at e4c.tech. And we want to thank you for supporting the Intern Whisperer by subscribing to our show on Podbean. Jessica, thank you so much. Amazing. I had so much fun. I'm so glad you said yes to me. Like I said, she's a dynamic woman, and I'm pretty sure you feel the same, man. She's amazing, right?
Oh yeah, this was so much fun.
Yeah.
Seriously, we could talk for hours.
Yeah. Amazing, Jess. So there you go. You are your hashtag.
You guys are great. Oh, thank you.